Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today is Disclosure Day. Well, it's not really, but some people are calling it that because the US government, for the first time in history, just did a huge drop declassifying so many documents on the UFO topic and some videos, along with some images. And there are pages and pages of links that take you to these documents on the website that they set up, which is War.Gov /UFO. It starts with the Trump message. Based on the tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, and unidentified flying objects, UFOs, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. God bless America. Then you have the response to that, and then you have the links. So a lot of people are already talking about this. The news story right now in the UFO world has shifted from the fact that these were released to some of what's happening as a result of that already. And I think more will unfold as the weekend goes on and into next week. And there is the intention to continue releasing more files. So we might end up seeing more interesting things as time goes on. But right now, a lot of people are just scrambling to comb through all of this data. And I guess it's similar to the other declassification efforts that have been going on recently in the US government around things like JFK, of course, Epstein files, and then we have MK Ultra stuff coming forward. I want to read you a blurb from American Alchemy's Substack newsletter. And this is called The Pivotal Disclosure Moment, Obscured by Today's File Release. Jesse Michaels from American Alchemy says, aside from a handful of photos, a number of witness reports, and a few interesting new videos, which were not vastly more detailed than what has been released in recent years, the first trench of UFO files was not altogether mind-blowing. Focus has been drawn to Apollo-era flight logs and details, much of which has been declassified for the better part of 50 years. While I am not saying these parts of the release aren't interesting, as well as the value of the government treating this topic with seriousness and pushing it further into the general public's consciousness, I think few people would have changed positions from where they originally stood prior to 8 a.m. this morning. Now, that's the part that I thought was so well put, because as we all know, this topic is vast. And so, in order to even have a perspective on it, you have to spend time with it, which is why I make this channel, by the way. Thank you for being here with me. If you are into this kind of stuff, please leave your comments and like it and share it and subscribe. But, it takes time. And as you sit with this, you have to also get into the tangential topics like the history of remote viewing, the history of secret programs in the CIA, the way that money is filtered into these private companies and government contractors, the whistleblower history, whistleblower protections, US hearings on UAP transparency. There's just a lot to dig into. And then you have the whole PSI, and consciousness side of the topic. And all of these things must be understood to some extent in order to have a perspective on UFO UAP. You have people out there like Tom Campbell, who is the NASA astrophysicist and out-of-body researcher, who studied the out-of-body experience for 30 years, developed a great theory of everything that I still find the most compelling when it comes to all of the simulation hypotheses that are out there. And it is also deeply rooted in ancient traditional views of reality, such as Buddhism and Hinduism. And basically, he has often commented that some of this phenomena may just be consciousness phenomena. And that is the part of the conversation that's really bubbling to the surface recently. So what's interesting is that we do have a strong body of evidence to suggest that there are physical aliens within our physical matter reality who not only are here now and most likely have taken up residence in our oceans and underground, along with possibly maybe on the moon, around the planet, in our solar system. But you also have this theory of ultra terrestrials or extra dimensionals. And right now, I'm considering everything again. But what feels most probable to me is that we are dealing with a consciousness based simulation like reality, not in the sense that it's in a computer, but rather that consciousness is fundamental and everything that we experience is derived from consciousness. And therefore, there are realms of experience that go beyond this subset of the larger reality, which is physical matter reality, where all of our physics and current science and understanding still do hold up and make sense within this little bubble of human existence. But it seems to me like we might be going through a shift and that our own physical matter reality system might be opening up to a different type of experience right now. And this is across the board, across the whole planet, all of humanity. There are people in many countries right now who there's like a psychic renaissance going on. I was almost going to say resonance, and maybe that's a better word, but there's a psychic renaissance going on where there are children around the world studying this vision without eyes technique that got really popular a couple years ago and started spreading to the United States. Now you have schools popping up everywhere, trainings, teachers, videos online. You can look up Mind Sight, Vision Without Eyes, or Seeing Without Eyes. And what it appears to be is this wave of human consciousness awakening to a psi ability. And it seems that we are all potentially going to be awakening to many more psi abilities as time goes on, especially if we choose to cultivate them. And to me, this is the most interesting part of all of this, because in order to have a clear perspective on whether or not the alien and UAP phenomena is consciousness phenomena or physical matter reality visitation, we need to have a better understanding of consciousness phenomena. And in order for the collective to have that understanding, we can't be taking other people's word for it. We need to all develop our own understanding. So I was thinking about dreaming. Most of us dream, but not everyone does. But it would be pretty rare to meet a person who said, I've never had a dream and I never dream. At least in my experience, most everyone I know has had some dreams, but a lot of times they don't remember a lot of them, or they might have said, I dreamed more when I was a kid, I dream less now. But dreaming is something that most of us are capable of. And it's kind of this weird ephemeral sort of thing where if you want to dream more and you want to remember your dreams more, there are these practices and techniques and tools that you can apply in order to have more dreams. I believe the same is true of the out of body experience. And that is to say that it's something that is available to everyone, and potentially there was a time in reality where it was just normal and more people were having more consciousness experiences. For whatever reason, the culture has kind of hardened into this extreme, materialist, capitalist, scientific paradigm that we're currently living within. And we've kind of lost touch, at least in Western culture, not in indigenous cultures, of course, but in especially Western culture, we've lost touch with that side of our humanity. Now, how sad would a world be where we all stopped dreaming and people even forgot that dreaming was possible, and they even stopped talking about it, and it became like this weird myth and this strange little back alley thing that was going on where some people, I've heard that some people dream, but how weird would that be to you now, knowing how prevalent dreaming is? I think the same has happened with the out of body experience, where it feels so niche and so kind of fringe, but the truth is it's really innate to humankind, and it's time to kind of bring that ability back online for the purpose of analyzing consciousness phenomena from all of our different important perspectives. I believe that it's time for all of us to participate in these things so that we can advance our collective consciousness, and not for just certain individuals to be advancing in these different ways. Which is why, even though it feels really silly sometimes, I'm testing out a lot of these psi methods and abilities. And even when I don't get a good result every single time, I'm still continuing, because I feel that it's very important that I push past the mental barriers and try to access these things for myself. And not so that I can tell you what I've done, because it wouldn't really matter unless you did it too. But I find that when others are turning these abilities on for themselves, I get really inspired and interested in their stories. And so I'm also just trying to do the same thing, and also planning on sharing that progress as I go. So, on that note, I wanted to share a new channel that I discovered this week that I'm loving, and it's called Out of Body Stories. And as always, the links will be below. She says, "Hi, I'm Emma, and welcome to my channel, Out of Body Stories, the home of literal out of body stories and astral projection adventures. On this channel, you'll hear fascinating stories and interviews exploring other people's out of body adventures. I also document my own experiences as I attempt to go from spontaneous out of body experiences to mastering intentional journeys beyond the physical. Every story shared here is a subjective account of that person's experience, genuine, thought provoking, and designed to expand your perspective on what's truly possible. Here are the main topics I post about, or the main types: sit down chats, first person profiles, and cinematic stories." So she has a couple links here as well. And based on her accent, she sounds maybe British. I am assuming her gender, but I may be wrong. Um, she has right now on the channel 44 videos, and I've watched a couple of them, and I'm really excited to watch more because, again, it's just hearing from people that I find most fascinating. It's hearing how they came to it. Like, for example, there was this guy on one of the episodes I watched, and he didn't even know about some of the teachers of Out of Body. He just had his own story about it, and he learned. His name is Nelson. His episode is called "He Can Open a Portal Anytime. Here's How." And his own website and channel is called Cave of Mystery. And when he talks about his story, I'm cross-referencing his data points with theories like Tom Campbell's and others, and even like Darius J. Wright, another teacher of out of body who one of my friends is studying with right now. Darius's approach is all about going into the hypnagogic sleep stage, or rather going into sleep paralysis and then separating consciousness from the physical in that way, which is quite difficult. And some other people do it through meditation, some do it through psychedelics. Tom Campbell does it through free will, through creating an intention. And that's what I was hearing from this guy too. But there were these little context clues as well. He was religious before he started this. He had his own experiences hearing the voice of God in his mind as a kid. And he was meditating in a closet with all the lights out as part of his practice, which is already pretty extreme and interesting. He was working with some kind of teacher, like a pastor of some kind. I don't know what he called him, but maybe I'm thinking it was some kind of pastor. And he was learning that that teacher had gone to space in an out of body experience. And as soon as he learned about it, he felt like, I want that for myself. I really want to do that. So he just developed this natural, strong intention that was clear. I want that for myself. And then later in his meditation, he was in the darkness, perceiving the darkness. All of a sudden, he began to see these little spots of light, which is actually how they describe the mind sight opening as well. Many times, this is how it starts off. So he sees all these little dots of light everywhere, and then he notices, like, oh, that's the moon over there. Oh, that's the earth over there. He realizes he's in space, and then he's starting to have an out of body experience. And then he talks about the thousands of experiences he's had after that, and the hundreds, if not thousands, of people that he trained. And he did say that only a handful of those didn't master the technique. And his teaching, unlike many others who you might spend thousands of dollars going to and many weeks, if not months or years, learning their techniques, his teaching only takes 20 minutes. And the way he described it was, he's like, it's like if you had one eye closed and you all your life you're only seeing through one eye, and then I just told you how to open your eye. I'm just like, open your eye, and then all of a sudden you're seeing. You didn't have to do anything to develop that vision or create some special pathway. You just had to open the eye. And I love how simple he makes it sound. I have not experienced it being that simple myself. I've been trying these different techniques for quite a while now, and I'm still working on it, only having little glimmers here and there. But I'm going to research his work a little bit more and see if there's anything I can apply to my own practice. Another thing he talked about was his interpretation of the experience was that we have three bodies: the physical, the spirit, and the soul. Um, in Hinduism, they talk about koshas, or the layers or sheaths of the body. I think this happens in Buddhism as well, and there are other frameworks that talk about these various bodies. Some people call it the astral body. Sometimes you hear about the silver cord. What I like about Tom Campbell's work is he really simplifies all of this and just says you're shifting data streams. All of this body stuff is just metaphorical, and people interpret the data in different ways, and so they come up with these different descriptions of what's going on. But ultimately, if your consciousness in a consciousness system and you're primarily focused in physical matter reality, the out of body experience has nothing to do with actually leaving a physical body, because it's not physical in the first place. It's just information being rendered for the consciousness, for the free will awareness unit that's experiencing reality. So when you kind of look at it through that lens, it makes it a lot more easy to imagine just shifting data streams using your awareness to move you from point to point. And that is kind of how this guy Nelson was talking about it too. He said, you just go and you come back. It's not a big deal. You just kind of flip over to this, you flip over to that. I just love hearing these stories because the more people that are doing it, the more real it feels, and the less likely it is that thousands and thousands of people are just lying about these experiences. And maybe to you it doesn't feel that way. Maybe you're like, oh, they could all be lying. Well, they could. Doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when a lot of them don't know each other and a lot of them aren't getting anything out of this. So I find it very helpful when people do share their stories, which is why I'm so intrigued by this new channel, Out of Body Stories. A couple other things that came up this week. So on this topic, American Alchemy, Jesse Michaels, who I talked about at the beginning, did an episode on thoughts changing reality. So it seems like he is also coming around to the consciousness side of all of this and starting to go even deeper into that. He had a couple clips from Rizwan Virk, who is a simulation hypothesis guy. His is a little more computer simulation based than Tom Campbell's theory, but they were just exploring different theories about how reality could work and the kind of mechanics and science behind all of it. And another thing that's coming up in a lot of these conversations is the idea of plasma being a sort of substance of experience. I'm not too clear on plasma stuff. I've heard some things that just seem really silly and out there, and then more and more credible and intelligent people are talking about it. I think over the next couple years, we're going to continue to learn more about plasma and what it actually means in our physical matter reality universe that we're in, along with how it may relate to other realms that go beyond this realm. On Psychoactivo, Pavel was covering the other side of this moment in disclosure, which is this conference that happened among a group of religious figures who met with Rep. Burleson to talk about this release of UFO files and how it might impact their congregations. There's already a lot of drama going on around that, but basically, some of these pastors kind of got flared up and started saying things like, these are demons. We're going to find out about fallen angel technology and demons, and they're already developing a perspective that is a bit inflammatory. So one of those men actually did a public apology to Burleson, and people are still discussing this a lot. This is what actually Jesse Michaels ends up going into in this Substack. He ends up digging into this phones off meeting that happened in an Airbnb in the mountains of Tennessee. And this was like pre-disclosure day stuff. So what's interesting about this, I'm going to quote here, he described them as Christians in intelligence operations who were specifically focused on gathering evidence about what was happening behind the scenes in the disclosure community. His account suggests the outreach to faith leaders was not a last-minute decision, but part of a longer deliberate process. Now, this is not totally crazy. I mean, the New Paradigm Institute, Danny Sheehan, and others have been talking about the need for this type of thing for years now, how there is this sort of psycho-spiritual component to all of this that we need to prepare for as we shift paradigms into this new era of like, we are not alone. There's a lot that could upset people, not in the ways where like everything's going to stop and all the systems are going to collapse. We know that's not going to happen because people have been bombarded with all kinds of crazy information over the last few years, and somehow we still just wake up and go to work every day and life keeps on lifing, and that's going to continue even as more and more information about UFOs and aliens comes to light. But it is important to consider how these things can impact people's spiritual paradigms and how we can, work with new information instead of trying to force old paradigms into the new paradigm that we're entering into. So basically, shoehorning in these religious agendas into what's going on with disclosure. That's where things get a little messy and potentially dangerous. But that's probably going to happen, if that's what's realistic. I also wanted to mention that on the topic of Danny Sheehan and the New Paradigm Institute, they also released one of their newsletters this week that talks about new FOIA documents revealing a space tiger team. So, quoting here from the newsletter, the document outlines the creation of a space tiger team tasked with addressing the mitigation of UFO UAP encounters. The mitigation of encounters. So, Space Force kind of stuff is what I'm hearing. What Sheehan points out as striking here is the document assigns Arrow a leading role in developing deconfliction mechanisms for space-based UAP detections. In military terms, deconfliction, new word for me, refers to protocols designed to prevent conflict, accidents, or escalation between forces. Deconfliction documents are not created in connection to theories and conjecture. They are operational documents that reflect real-world scenarios, which in this case equates to UFOs and UAPs in space. So, again, just a little more evidence to show that, like, this is real, this is ongoing. Everything that is being released now is just one little bit of the information, and it's still a little more confirmation for those who have been studying this closely and monitoring this whole situation for 80 plus years, because as we know, the UFO history in the United States, this idea of reverse engineered crash retrieval programs, the study of anomalous tech, the possession of alien bodies, possible collaboration with non-human entities really started around the 1940s, and there were so many layers of secrecy that buried this stuff due to Cold War mentalities, and then it just spiraled out of control. So there's this whole interesting dynamic to be studied when it comes to this topic that really helps to make sense of how we got where we are today. But what that means is that anything that the government's going to share is going to be very tip of the iceberg, because the truth of what they've done is they've lied to us for a long time, and they've also squandered a lot of our resources on things that we didn't even know were going on. So they're not going to out themselves when it comes to all of that, just like all the other weird bad stuff that comes to light that then just kind of goes away. So for those of us who are super interested in continuing to learn about the truth of this topic, we just have to stay steady, keep showing up, don't let the surface level story ruffle our feathers, but just continue to read the books, listen to the researchers, the experiencers, the contactees, the abductees, and also the pilots and military whistleblowers, the intelligence agency whistleblowers who are still in need of better whistleblower protections, as they're the ones who are really pushing forward this level of the disclosure process. And it is a valuable layer. I'm pretty excited that all of these documents came out today, and I'm looking forward to digging into some of them this weekend. And as always, the links will be below. Oh, the one other thing I wanted to talk about was a really cool video, which I'll also link for you, from New Thinking Aloud. And the more I listen to Jeffrey Mishlove on New Thinking Aloud, the more I love him. What an amazing, interesting man. What a scholarly mind, and also what a kind demeanor he has. He speaks to so many different types of people and has these really compelling conversations. It's such an informative channel. And the video that I really found interesting this week, and I watched a couple of his episodes this week, is called Psychotherapy, Porous Mind, and Spirit Possession with Robert Falconer. So I just found this very grounding and affirming, basically, in the consciousness theory that I currently subscribe to more than any others. Consciousness can travel between bodies. It can be outside of a body, it can be in a body, it can swap bodies, you can have two consciousness in one body. There's all kinds of different phenomena that are implied once you understand the fundamentals of how consciousness works within this reality framework laid out by Tom Campbell. And it's fun to even just speculate about all the others that we haven't even yet conceived of or heard stories of. But the idea of possession and channeling are kind of two sides of the same coin, and they have deep roots, and especially in the human experience. People have a lot of experiences that can be explained in different ways within the mental health framework, but sometimes a better way of looking at it is through this idea of the porous mind. And so I just found this conversation really enlightening and highly recommend it to anyone who is interested in that topic. Okay, have a good weekend. Happy Disclosure Day. More to come. More files will be dropped, more reflections next week. Book report coming soon. I'm still reading the Niara Terela Isley book, and I'm really excited to get into the work of Nancy Trivolato next, the Brazilian researcher who also studies the out-of-body experience. So again, subscribe to the channel. If you liked this, I would really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.